Have you ever looked at someone across a crowded room and just felt, an undeniable pull?
Oh, absolutely.
Or maybe you've wondered why humans, unlike, most mammals, fundamentally choose to pair up. Why do we fall head over heels for one specific person? There are billions out there.
It really is one of humanity's most universal experiences, isn't it? And yeah, often baffling.
Totally.
So today, we're taking a deep dive into the groundbreaking scientific work of Dr. Helen Fisher. She's a biological anthropologist who's dedicated her whole career to unraveling the biology behind sex, love, and attachment.
And our mission here really is to give you a kind of scientific shortcut. We want to help you understand what's actually happening in our brains when we love, how these powerful connections evolved, and, what makes us pick that special person.
Exactly, and the insights we're sharing today, they come straight from extensive interviews with Dr. Fisher herself. We're drawing on her 6 books, decades of really rigorous research. We're talking brain scans, large-scale demographic studies, the works.
So get ready, because your understanding of love might just get fundamentally rewired.
Definitely.
Okay, let's start at the beginning. Dr. Fisher's own journey into this field. You mentioned her childhood was unconventional. How did that influence her curiosity about love?
Well, yeah, imagine this. Growing up in a literal glass house in New Canaan, Connecticut, right next door to Philip Johnson's famous glass house.
Wow.
So an environment of transparency surrounded by nature, but crucially, her parents created this really open household where, as she says, sex was an important part of a partnership.
That's quite progressive for the time.
It really was. She says there was nothing prurient about it. Her dad even gave her 20 books on sex when she turned 18. So this openness, it clearly set a very unique formative tone for her.
And it sounds like she had some early, almost gut feelings about relationships. You mentioned an anecdote from Cape Cod.
Yes, it's quite vivid. She was just 5 on this tiny towel with her parents and her twin sister. Her father told them, "Don't look back." When the parents came back, her mother, who apparently could be a bit argumentative sometimes, was suddenly really charming and, intimately close with her father. Dr. Fisher remembers looking at them and just thinking, something's going on here. I don't know what it is, but I know it's good for me.
Huh. So even as a child, she sensed that connection was positive.
Exactly. For her, sex was always sort of around and understood as an essential, positive part of partnership, not hidden away.
And that experience, especially being an identical twin, seems like it challenged the whole blank slate idea for her pretty early on.
Absolutely pivotal. She was maybe 8 or 9, and a friend asked if she and her twin sister thought alike. Later, in graduate school, this memory fueled her challenge to the dominant tabula rasa concept, the idea that we're born blank slates shaped only by experience.
Right. She figured personality had to have some genetic basis.
Exactly. She thought, look, if any human behavior has biological roots, it has to be patterns of love and marriage. Why? Because it's fundamental for Darwinian survival, passing on our DNA.
Makes sense.
So when her first academic paper on love got shot down by a reviewer calling it supernatural, well, that just made her more determined. She set out to prove love is a powerful, real, universal brain system, just like anger or fear. Something found in, over 200 societies worldwide?
And that leads us directly to her core hypothesis, right? The idea that love isn't just one thing, but involves 3 distinct brain systems.
Precisely. This is a crucial part of her work. She proposes that we have 3 distinct, but definitely interconnected brain systems that evolve specifically for mating and reproduction.
Okay, 3 systems. Do they work together or separately? What are they?
Good question. They can work together or independently. So the first is the sex drive. That's pretty basic, evolved just to get you out there looking for a range of potential partners.
Got it. Just motivation.
Right. Then there's romantic love. This evolved to help you focus all that mating energy onto just one person at a time, that obsessive focus.
The main event for many.
And third, there's deep attachment. This system evolved to enable you to stick with that partner, at least long enough to raise a single child through infancy together. That feeling of calm and security with someone.
So sex drive, romantic love, deep attachment. Understanding these helps explain why relationships change over time.
Exactly. It helps us see why that initial intense romance might shift, or why you can feel deep attachment without intense passion, or even just feel the sex drive. And importantly, it suggests we can consciously nurture each system to keep connections strong.
That's a really useful framework. And it directly tackles that big question. Why do humans pair up at all? Most mammals don't form these long-term bonds.
It really does. Her early research looking at UN demographic yearbooks, ethnographic studies, she found this incredibly consistent pattern.
Which was?
That every single culture in the world has some mechanism for people to form some sort of partnership to rear their babies as a team. Customs varied wildly, gods, clothes, songs, everything, but as she says, everybody loves. It pointed to a universal human tendency.
So definitely not just cultural conditioning, it's deeper. Evolutionary. What's the story there? Why did pair bonding become so critical for us?
Well, the narrative she puts together is fascinating. It goes back about 4.4 million years ago. Our ancestors were basically forced out of the forests onto the open grasslands, much more dangerous territory.
Right, needed new survival strategies.
And to survive there, they had to start walking upright on two legs. But this created a huge new problem, especially for females.
Which was?
They now had to carry their infants in their arms. Imagine carrying a 20-pound bowling ball everywhere while trying to gather food and avoid predators.
Yeah, incredibly vulnerable.
Totally. So they desperately needed male protection and provisioning someone to help carry things, watch their back. And for a male, the most effective strategy to ensure his DNA survived was to protect and provide for one female and her offspring. Sticking with one partner became advantageous.
So that's what she calls the monogamy threshold.
Exactly. It became an evolutionary win-win. Females needed help raising vulnerable infants. Males needed to protect their genetic investment. Those who formed stable pairs were more likely to see their children survive.
So this capacity for love, for partnership, for raising kids as a team, it's baked into our biology because it helped us survive.
Deeply embedded in our human nature. It really is a fundamental survival mechanism, not just some, poetic ideal.
Okay, if love is so biological, so fundamental, how do you even study it? Putting people in brain scanners while they're in love sounds complicated.
It was. But the protocol they developed was really ingenious and very rigorous, specifically designed to capture romantic love in the brain.
How did it work?
Okay, so participants would lie in the fMRI scanner. First, they'd look at a photograph of their sweetheart for about 30 seconds. Then, crucially, they did this intense psychological distraction task.
Distraction task.
Yeah, like counting backward rapidly in increments of 7 from a huge number, say 4,821, for 30 seconds. The idea was to sort of relax the brain, wash out the intense emotion, and shift blood flow away from those emotional centers.
Like a mental palate cleanser.
Exactly. So after the counting, they'd look at a photo of a neutral person, someone they knew but had no strong feelings about for 30 seconds, then count backward again.
So the cycle was sweetheart, count back, neutral photo, count back.
Right, repeated 6 times. This allowed them to subtract the brain activity during the neutral phase from the activity during the sweetheart phase, isolating what was unique to feeling romantic love.
Clever. And what was the big reveal? What lit up?
She said when she first saw the data, she felt like she was looking back 4 million years into our evolutionary past. The key finding was significant activity in a tiny little factory near the base of the brain called the ventral tegmental area, or VTA.
The VTA, what does that do?
It's a core part of the brain's reward system, and it manufactures dopamine.
Dopamine. We hear about that a lot.
Yeah, it's a natural stimulant. And Dr. Fisher explains that dopamine gives you that focus, that motivation, the craving, the elation of intense romantic love. It drives that goal-oriented behavior.
So the VTA pumping out dopamine is behind that feeling, which means love isn't just an emotion. Is it something else?
That was the really stunning conclusion. Romantic love isn't primarily an emotion like happiness or sadness. It's a drive. A fundamental mating drive, a survival mechanism.
A drive, like hunger or thirst.
Exactly. It's located in the brain right near the regions that control thirst and hunger. And think about it, thirst and hunger keep you alive today. Romantic love, she argues, drives your DNA into tomorrow. It's fundamentally about the survival of the species.
Wow. Okay, that reframes things. But if love is such a powerful primal drive, that also explains why rejection hurts so incredibly much. Like that saying, nobody gets out of love alive.
That's precisely what Dr. Fisher thought. The suffering caused by romantic rejection is just immense. People lose jobs, get depressed, do dangerous things. She felt she had to study it, maybe make a contribution to humanity by understanding what's going on in the brain then too. And she hypothesized it might actually be an addiction.
Studying rejected people sounds even harder than studying people happily in love. What were the challenges there?
Oh, it was incredibly difficult. She talks about how participants sometimes just wouldn't show up, Or they'd cry so hard in the scanner that their head moved too much, making the data useless.
Oh, man.
Or they'd get so angry after the scan, thinking about the person who dumped them. They'd go home and, start drinking heavily. It really highlighted how overwhelmingly powerful this brain system is. They actually had to implement post-scan care calling participants, going for walks, because the fallout from rejection can be so severe. Stalking, clinical depression, even suicide or homicide in rare cases.
That's intense. So the big question was her hypothesis, right? Is rejected love like an addiction, biologically speaking?
Yes. Unequivocally, the brain scans supported it.
What did they find?
Okay, several key things. First, the VTA was still active. Even though they'd been dumped, that dopamine system was still pumping. They were still intensely in love.
Still craving them.
Exactly. Second, they saw activity in brain regions associated with deep attachment. Third, and this explains the pain, there was activity in regions linked with physical pain.
Like actual physical pain?
Yes, similar to the feeling of a toothache, but as Dr. Fisher points out, a toothache usually goes away. This pain can last months, even years. But the crucial finding, the real clincher for the addiction hypothesis, was activity in 3 specific brain regions linked with craving and addiction. Most importantly, the nucleus accumbens.
And the nucleus accumbens is involved in.
It's a key player in all kinds of addictions. Cocaine, heroin, alcohol, nicotine, even gambling addiction. Seeing activity there in people rejected in love was powerful evidence.
So the conclusion is, romantic love, whether you're happy in it or painfully rejected, fundamentally is an addiction.
That's the profound takeaway from her research. It operates like an addiction in the brain.
What are the implications of that? How should that change how we think about breakups?
Well, Dr. Fisher argues that because it is an addiction, you can't just tell someone to get over it. People might not be able to get rid of them, the feelings, the obsession on their own willpower. She believes rejection in love needs to be treated as a very special addiction with very special therapies. Perhaps drawing on principles similar to those used in Alcoholics Anonymous, like removing triggers, getting support. It really demands more compassion and understanding for people going through heartbreak, recognizing the deep biological forces at play.
That's incredibly powerful. Shifting gears a bit, thinking about this drive in our modern world, how does love actually last? Or how do we even find it now with things like online dating?
Right. Well, first, the good news. Romantic love can last long term. It doesn't just have to fade into companionship.
Oh, really? She studied that too?
Yep. They scanned people in their 50s and 60s who reported still being intensely in love after an average of 21 years of marriage.
And what did their brains look like?
They still showed activity in the VTA, that romantic love engine was still firing, but it was combined with activity in regions linked to deep attachment and also feelings of calm and security. So the passion can endure alongside the comfort.
That's hopeful. So what's the secret sauce then? How does Dr. Fisher advise people to keep all 3 systems, sex drive, romance, attachment, alive in a long-term relationship?
She offers some very practical advice targeting each system. First, for the sex drive, have regular sex. Pretty straightforward, it drives up testosterone.
Yeah.
Second, for romantic love, the dopamine system. Novelty, 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 do new things together. It doesn't have to be skydiving. Ride bikes in a different park, try a new restaurant, take a different route for your walk, explore a new town on vacation, just vary the routine.
Yeah.
Novelty triggers dopamine.
Keep it fresh. Makes sense. And for attachment?
For deep attachment, which is linked to oxytocin, practice consistent, pleasant touch. Hold hands when you're watching TV, give a real kiss goodbye, sleep touching, put your arm around them. That regular, comforting physical contact keeps the oxytocin flowing and fosters security and bonding.
Sex, novelty, and touch. Sounds doable. And you mentioned earlier that strong partnerships have health benefits.
Huge benefits. People in happy partnerships genuinely tend to live longer, healthier lives. They have lower rates of heart disease, recover faster from illness. Plus, just laughing together drives up dopamine. Playing together actually contributes to brain growth. It's a holistic win.
What about finding love today? Online dating is massive now. How does she see that impacting things?
The data is pretty stark. More people now meet their last first date, as she puts it, online than offline. In 2017, it was something like 40% online versus maybe 25% through friends.
Wow, that's a big shift.
Use it.
Good. Bad.
Interestingly, studies suggest that relationships starting online might actually be slightly less likely to end in divorce.
Really?
It's not the technology itself, she thinks. It's more about the people using it. Online daters tend to be, on average, more likely to be employed, often more highly educated, and crucially, they're usually there with a clearer intention. looking for a committed, long-term partner. It's a more focused marking place, in a way.
That makes sense. And alongside online dating, you mentioned she identified this trend called slow love. What's that about?
Yeah, slow love is this emerging courtship pattern she's observed. People are marrying later, late 20s, even 30s now, and they're taking much longer in what she calls the pre-commitment stage before tying the knot.
So what does that look like?
It often starts really casually, like just friends. Then maybe it progresses to friends with benefits. During this phase, they're learning a lot about each other: patience, kindness, sense of humor, how they handle conflict without the pressure of defining things immediately.
Less pressure early on.
Right. If that goes well, then they might have an official first date, then maybe they slowly move in together. And only after all that, eventually, marriage.
So by the time they actually get married,
Exactly. By the wedding day, couples know who they've got, they know they want who they've got, and they think they can keep who they've got. It's a much more informed decision. And the data backs it up. Marrying later, after a longer courtship, generally leads to more stable partnerships. It's a smart adaptation, really.
and now there's video chatting adding another layer to this.
Yes, video chatting before meeting in person is becoming huge. And it's leading to, as she puts it, more meaningful, longer, honest, transparent conversations. People are focusing less on just looks and maybe more on things like financial stability, job security, shared values.
Getting deeper faster.
Kind of. And here's a wild statistic. In one survey, 50% of people reported actually falling in love during these video chats.
Falling in love over video before meeting.
Yeah. It shows how love is like that sleeping cat. As she says, it can be awakened instantly, even through a screen if the connection is right. The result: people are having more meaningful first dates, but fewer first dates. They're weeding out the mismatches earlier. Fewer frogs, as she puts it.
Fewer frogs. I like that. Okay, what about millennials? They sometimes get stereotyped as being unserious about commitment. What does Dr. Fisher's work suggest?
It's interesting. She actually pushes back hard against that stereotype. She calls millennials the new Victorians.
We're Victorians. Why?
Because her data suggests they're actually quite careful and cautious about relationships. They tend to have less sex than previous generations at the same age. Many are prioritizing getting their career and finances sorted before settling down and marrying. They take love seriously.
So not flaky then.
Not really. They might engage in casual sex, sure, but they seem quick to get rid of it if it's clearly not going anywhere meaningful. They even invented the term DTR, define their relationship, and they typically want that conversation within about 4 months. They value transparency. She sees their approach to sex sometimes as almost an interview process, a pragmatic way to assess compatibility in an era where pregnancy and disease are more easily managed.
That's a really different perspective. Okay, this all leads back to the fundamental question that really kicked off her big project with Match.com. Why do you fall in love with one person rather than another? You said it's more than just childhood, it's chemical.
Exactly. She realized it couldn't just be your upbringing. There had to be something about our innate biology, our chemical composition. This led her to identify 4 broad styles of thinking and behaving that are linked to dominant brain systems.
Okay, what are these 4 styles?
Right, she links them to 4 neurochemical systems. First, there are the explorers, who are primarily driven by the dopamine system. Then the builders, linked to serotonin. Third, the directors, associated with testosterone. And fourth, the negotiators, linked to estrogen.
Explorer, builder, director, negotiator. Tell us about them. Who's attracted to whom?
Okay, so explorers, high dopamine. They're the novelty seekers, risk takers, creative, spontaneous, energetic types. Think entrepreneurs, adventurers. Builders, high serotonin, are more cautious, traditional, conventional, follow rules, detail-oriented, often community-minded. Think managers, administrators. Now, what's fascinating is that explorers tend to be drawn to other explorers, and builders are often drawn to other builders.
So similarity attracts for those types.
Often, yes. She notes you often find explorers clustered in cities, while builders might gravitate more towards suburbs or rural areas, seeking stability.
Interesting. And the other 2?
Yeah.
Directors and negotiators.
Directors, high testosterone, tend to be analytical, logical, decisive, direct, good at rule-based systems. Think engineers, scientists, musicians sometimes. Negotiators, high estrogen, are typically more verbally skilled, intuitive, empathetic, imaginative, see the big picture, good with people. Think therapists, writers, HR folks. And these 2 types, they're often drawn to each other.
Ah, so that's where opposites attract comes in. Director meets negotiator.
Exactly. The analytical director is drawn to the negotiator's empathy and intuition, and the negotiator appreciates the director's decisiveness and focus. It's a complementary pairing. So while the basic brain pathway for falling in love might be universal, who triggers it in you is strongly influenced by these underlying biological temperaments.
So even though the feeling of love might activate the same core brain regions, how we express it or who we choose isn't the same for everyone, or even between genders necessarily.
No, definitely not identical. She points to overwhelming data showing evolved gender differences. On average, men tend to be more analytical, focused, rule-based. Women tend to excel linguistically, think more contextually, holistically. She uses the analogy of having 2 feet we need both to get ahead, men and women, but we are not anatomically alike. Our brains have subtle but significant average differences.
And how does that play out in romance itself?
Well, as we touched on, her data suggests men actually tend to fall in love faster and more often. They're usually keener to introduce a partner to friends and family, want to move in sooner. And tragically, men are about 2.5 times more likely to commit suicide after a major breakup.
Wow.
So, contrary to stereotypes, she argues men might actually be the more romantic sex, biologically speaking.
That really challenges conventional wisdom. And she turned all this research into a personality questionnaire.
Yes, based directly on this brain circuitry research, validated with brain scans, it measures the degree to which you express traits linked to each of those 4 systems. Dopamine, serotonin, testosterone, estrogen. It's been taken by, over 15 million people now in 40 countries, used not just for dating sites like Match, but also in business, she calls it neurocolor for the corporate world.
So understanding these innate personality traits, the explorer, builder, director, negotiator, in ourselves and our partners, what's the real benefit?
It gives you incredible insight. It allows for workarounds, as she says. Instead of blaming every relationship problem on, your mother or your childhood, you can understand that some friction might stem from fundamental differences in biological temperament.
Like, okay, he's a director, he needs things spelled out logically, or she's an explorer, she needs novelty.
Exactly. It provides a framework for understanding, predicting certain behaviors or needs, and finding ways to accommodate them rather than just getting frustrated. It's a powerful tool for building more compatible and understanding partnerships.
This feels like a good moment to transition to something really personal about Dr. Fisher. After all of this research, decades studying love, dismissing marriage for herself, she actually got married quite late in life, right? In 75.
Yes, it's a truly wonderful, poignant story. Her now husband, John Tierney, a science writer, had actually interviewed her several times over the years.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And apparently at one point, he told her first when he was a bit drunk, she says, then again soberly, "I'm gonna marry you, Helen Fisher."
Huh. Bold move.
Right. And then there's this great little story, the cocktail napkin story. They were playing a game early on, writing down secretly what they hoped to win from their budding relationship.
Okay, what did they write?
She wrote down a real kiss. He wrote sex and clarity.
Clarity meaning?
Meaning, essentially, friends with benefits, clarity about the terms. But she famously told him right then, "Be careful, John. Sex is not casual. You can trigger the dopamine system in the brain and fall in love."
And did they?
They certainly did. They eventually married.
So what was that like for her after studying love so objectively for so long? What did experiencing marriage reveal?
She talks about this immediate realization right after they got married. The social recognition was part of it, people's reactions when they mentioned they were on their honeymoon. But there was also this profound personal discovery. She found a little note she'd scribbled to herself around that time. It said, "I married for adventure. He married for union." And then she wrote, "I found union."
Wow, she found union?
Yes. And her husband's reflection captured it too. He simply said, "It's richer. It's deeper." For her, it was this unexpected layer of connection and meaning that even her decades of research hadn't fully prepared her for personally.
So even the expert found something new in the lived experience.
Absolutely. She says she now has this completely new appreciation for wedding rings, especially seeing them on men. A deep respect for people who make that commitment. As she candidly admits, "It took me 50 years to get there." It's a beautiful testament to how personal experience can deepen even the most rigorous scientific understanding.
What an incredible journey, both scientifically and personally. So let's try to wrap this up. This deep dive into Dr. Helen Fisher's work, it really paints a picture of love that's far from just, hearts and flowers.
Definitely not. We've seen love as this universal biological drive, a survival mechanism deeply rooted in our evolution.
Driven by those 3 distinct brain systems, the sex drive, romantic love, and deep attachment.
Right. And understanding its power means also understanding its potential dark side, its addictive nature, especially when we face rejection.
We've also seen how courtship itself is evolving: slow love, online dating, video vetting, adapting to modern life, maybe even becoming more intentional.
And how our fundamental innate personality styles, explorer, builder, director, negotiator, play a huge role in who we choose and why some pairings click while others clash.
So here's a final thought to leave you with, drawing from Dr. Fisher's perspective. She suggests that maybe, just maybe, we're currently shedding about 10,000 years of traditions shaped by agriculture.
And moving back towards partnerships that are actually more aligned with our ancient human spirit. Perhaps more like the egalitarian, companionate partnerships our ancestors might have had on the grasslands millions of years ago.
What could that mean for the future of love, relationships, and human connection? Something to think about.
So take a moment out. Reflect on your own relationships, your own experiences with love, through this new scientific lens we've explored today. How might understanding the biology, the drives, the personality types, how might that change how you see love in your own life and in the world around you?